Imagine waking up one morning, walking into your kitchen and finding it completely empty. No pots, no pans, no bowls, no spoons, nothing. How would you eat? How would you survive? For most of us, that sounds like a nightmare. But for the vast majority of human history, for hundreds of thousands of years, that was simply Tuesday. Here's what's wild. The humans who lived before pottery existed, before metal cookware, before the year 1800 and its industrial kitchens, they weren't weak. They weren't fragile. They were stronger, leaner, and in many ways more physically capable than we are today. They survived ice ages. They crossed continents on foot. They built the pyramids, the Colosseum, the Great Wall, all without protein shakes or a stainless steel cooking pot. So the question is, what were they doing? How did they cook? How did they eat? And is there something they knew, some ancient trick that we've completely forgotten? Let's go back, way back, and uncover the mystery of food before the modern kitchen. Most history books talk about ancient civilizations in terms of wars, kings, and empires. Rarely does anyone stop and ask the most fundamental question of all. What did these people eat for dinner? And even more importantly, how did they cook it? The year 1800 is often treated as a kind of turning point. The Industrial Revolution was beginning to change manufacturing. Metal cookware was becoming more affordable and widespread. Clay pottery had already been in use for thousands of years, but before all of that, before the first fired clay pot, before the first hammered copper vessel, what then? The answer takes us into one of the most fascinating and overlooked chapters of human history. A chapter not written in books, but preserved in ash heaps, charred bones, stone tool marks, and the DNA of ancient food residues found in archaeological digs around the world. What scientists have uncovered is nothing short of remarkable, and it forces us to completely rethink what cooking even means. Let's start with the most obvious thing: fire. Fire is not a cooking vessel. It has no shape. It cannot hold water. It cannot be picked up and moved to the table. And yet, for hundreds of thousands of years, fire was the kitchen. Fire was the pot. Fire was everything. The earliest evidence of controlled fire use by human ancestors dates back roughly 1 million years, possibly even further. Sites in South Africa, Kenya, and Israel have revealed charred animal bones and plant matter that suggest our ancestors weren't just warming themselves by the flames. They were cooking. But how do you cook on an open flame without any vessel? The simplest and most ancient method is direct roasting. You take a piece of meat, a chunk of mammoth, a fish, a rabbit, and you place it directly onto hot coals. Not the flames themselves, which would char the outside while leaving the inside raw. The coals, the deep, glowing red embers that radiate an intense, even heat. This is a technique that still works perfectly today. Archaeologists and food historians who have recreated these ancient methods consistently report the same thing. Meat cooked directly in coals is astonishingly good. The outside develops a deep, smoky crust. The inside stays moist and tender. The natural fats render out slowly. The proteins lock in. No pot needed. No pan needed. Just coals, patience, and knowledge. The kind of knowledge passed down through generations of human experience. But here's where the real mystery begins. Because roasting on coals, as effective as it is, has one major limitation: it cannot boil water. And boiling, the ability to extract nutrients, soften tough ingredients, make broths and soups, is one of the most nutritionally powerful cooking methods ever invented. So how did ancient humans boil food without a pot? The answer is one of the most ingenious techniques in human history, and most people have never heard of it: stone boiling. Here's how it works. You find a natural container, a large animal stomach, a hide stretched over a wooden frame, a tightly woven basket coated with clay or pine pitch, or even a simple hole dug in the ground and lined with animal skin or clay. You fill it with water. Then you take river stones, smooth, dense rocks that hold heat well, and you place them directly into your fire. You let those stones get scorching hot, glowing hot. Hot enough that if you spit on one, it evaporates instantly. Then, using two sticks as tongs, you pick up those hot stones one by one and drop them into your water-filled container. Within minutes, sometimes just 2 or 3 minutes, you have a rolling, vigorous boil. You keep swapping out cooling stones for hot ones. You drop in your ingredients, meat, roots, leaves, seeds. And you have yourself a fully functional soup pot made entirely of rocks, water, and an animal's stomach. This technique was used across every continent on Earth. From the indigenous peoples of North America to ancient hunter-gatherers in Europe, from Aboriginal Australians to prehistoric communities in East Asia. Stone boiling is one of the most universal cooking technologies in human history, and it predates pottery by tens of thousands of years. Experiments by food archaeologists have shown that stone boiling is not just primitive survival cooking. It is efficient. A skilled practitioner can bring water to a boil faster than a modern campfire stove. The broth produced is rich, nutritious, and deeply flavored. And because the cooking vessel is organic, a stomach, a hide, a basket, it adds its own subtle flavors to the food. The ancient kitchen was not a lesser version of our own. It was a different technology entirely. Stone boiling handles liquid cooking. Open fire roasting handles direct heat. But what about slow cooking? What about the kind of deep, low and slow heat that breaks down tough connective tissue, turns hard root vegetables silky, and infuses food with a complex, layered flavor? For that, ancient humans developed what we now call the earth oven, and it is one of the most powerful and underappreciated cooking technologies ever devised. An earth oven is exactly what it sounds like, an oven made from the earth itself. You dig a pit in the ground, sometimes shallow, sometimes quite deep, depending on what you're cooking. You line the pit with stones. You build a large fire inside the pit and let it burn for hours, until the stones are fiercely hot and the surrounding soil has absorbed tremendous heat. Then you remove the ash and embers or bury them deeper. You layer in your food, whole animals, fish wrapped in leaves, tubers, corms, whatever is available. You cover everything with more hot stones, then layers of leaves, bark, and finally soil to trap the heat. And then you walk away, for hours, sometimes overnight. What you return to is not just cooked food. It is transformed food. The earth oven creates a sealed, moist environment where steam circulates constantly. Tough cuts of meat become fall-apart tender. Hard root vegetables become sweet and creamy. Fish develops a delicate, almost silky texture. This is not a compromised version of cooking. This is cooking at its highest expression. Evidence of earth ovens has been found at archaeological sites dating back over 300,000 years in some locations. The Hawaiian emu, the New Zealand marihangi, the Mexican barbacoa pit. All of these are living descendants of the exact same technology that ancient humans used long before anyone had thought to fire clay into a pot. And here is the nutritional revelation that modern food scientists have confirmed. Slow cooking in an earth oven actually increases the bioavailability of many nutrients. The long, moist heat breaks down anti-nutritional compounds in plants, makes proteins more digestible, and converts starches into forms the body can use far more efficiently. Those ancient people eating from earth ovens weren't eating lesser food. They were eating optimized food. But there was another force at work in the ancient kitchen that had nothing to do with fire at all: fermentation. Before refrigeration, before canning, before any form of modern food preservation, fermentation was how ancient humans extended the life of their food, increased its nutritional value, and whether they knew it or not, made it dramatically healthier. Every culture in the ancient world, without exception, fermented food. Milk left to sour became something far more digestible than fresh milk, with beneficial bacteria that strengthened the gut. Meat buried underground or left in salt developed concentrated flavors and preserved itself through microbial transformation. Grains soaked in water began to sprout and transform, becoming more nutritious and easier to digest. Archaeological evidence from sites across the Middle East and Asia shows that fermented beverages, early forms of beer and wine, were being produced as far back as 9,000 years ago. But fermented foods almost certainly predate this. The practice of burying meat or fish to let it transform, practiced by indigenous Arctic communities for thousands of years, is one of the oldest food technologies on Earth. What fermentation provided ancient humans was not just preservation, it was a kind of biological amplification. The bacteria and yeasts doing the work were essentially pre-digesting the food, breaking it down into more accessible nutrients, generating vitamins that weren't present in the raw ingredients, and creating compounds that supported immune function and gut health. The ancient human gut, shaped by thousands of years of fermented, fiber-rich whole food eating, was arguably more resilient than our own. Modern research on gut microbiome diversity consistently shows that populations eating traditional, pre-industrial diets have richer, more diverse microbial communities than those eating modern processed food. Fermentation wasn't a primitive workaround, it was ancient biotechnology. Before fired clay pottery became widespread, which happened in different regions at different times. With the oldest known pottery vessels dating back around 20,000 years in China, ancient humans used a remarkable variety of natural containers for cooking and food storage. Animal stomachs, as we've seen, were perfect for stone boiling, but the ingenuity didn't stop there. Large shells, abalone shells, clam shells, turtle shells, were used as natural bowls and even as heat-resistant cooking vessels placed directly over low flames. Archaeological evidence of shells used for cooking has been found at coastal sites around the world. Birch bark was one of the most versatile materials available to ancient peoples of northern climates. Birch bark containers can actually hold water. And because birch bark doesn't burn until temperatures far exceed the boiling point of water, a birch bark vessel can be held directly over a flame and used to boil liquid without catching fire, as long as there is water inside to absorb the heat. Tightly woven baskets, sealed with pine pitch or clay, were used for stone boiling across North America and parts of Europe. Some of these baskets were so finely constructed that they could hold water without leaking, and so well sealed that they functioned as legitimate cooking vessels for years. Large leaves, banana leaves, taro leaves, lotus leaves wrapped tightly around food and then placed in coals or earth ovens, served as both cooking vessel and flavor enhancer. This technique is still used across Southeast Asia, Polynesia, and Central America today. Bamboo, in cultures where it grew abundantly, provided a ready-made cylindrical cooking vessel. Green bamboo tubes filled with water, rice, or meat could be placed directly over fire. The moisture inside keeps the bamboo from igniting long enough to fully cook the contents. The food inside absorbs a subtle, green, woody fragrance. The variety and creativity of these pre-pottery cooking technologies is staggering. Ancient humans were not limited by the lack of ceramic cookware. They looked at the world around them and found 100 different solutions to the same problem. This brings us to the deepest mystery of all, and the answer, according to growing bodies of scientific research, is yes. In many measurable ways, pre-agricultural and early agricultural humans were physically more robust than modern people. Bone analysis of skeletal remains from hunter-gatherer populations consistently reveals greater bone density, stronger muscle attachment points, and evidence of lifelong physical activity that modern humans simply don't match. The cross-sectional geometry of ancient human leg bones shows the kind of bone architecture we now only see in elite athletes. Their teeth, despite no dental care, often show less decay than pre-industrial agricultural populations, because their diet was lower in refined carbohydrates and higher in diverse whole foods. Hunter-gatherer dental remains frequently show more wear from chewing tough foods, but less cavity formation. Studies of contemporary hunter-gatherer populations, the few that remain, consistently show cardiovascular health markers that are exceptional by modern standards. Low blood pressure, lean body composition, high levels of HDL cholesterol, low triglycerides. These are not primitive people struggling to survive. These are human bodies operating at something close to optimal. What were they eating that produced these results? The answer is complexity and diversity. A typical hunter-gatherer diet included dozens to hundreds of different plant species across a year, depending on season and region. It included insects, which are extraordinary sources of protein, healthy fats, and micronutrients. It included organ meats, liver, kidney, heart, brain, which are among the most nutrient-dense foods on Earth, and which modern Western diets almost entirely exclude. It included bone marrow, cracked open with stone tools, rich in fat-soluble vitamins and stem cell precursors. It included fermented foods. It included raw, cooked, dried, and smoked preparations of an enormous variety of ingredients. The ancient diet was not simple. It was, nutritionally speaking, extraordinarily complex. And it was cooked with tools that, while lacking the technological sophistication of a Le Creuset Dutch oven, were perfectly adapted to extract the maximum nutritional value from available ingredients. By the year 1800, the world of cooking was already vastly more complex than the ancient hunter-gatherer kitchen. Clay pottery had been in use for thousands of years. Bronze and iron cookware had transformed the kitchens of wealthy households across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The cuisines of China, India, France, the Ottoman Empire, and countless others were sophisticated, diverse, and deeply developed. But the Industrial Revolution brought something new: mass production. And with mass production came a shift in who had access to metal cookware, and more importantly, what kind of food that cookware was used to cook. As the 1800s progressed, food began to change. Roller mills produced refined white flour that was shelf-stable but stripped of nutrients. Sugar became cheaper and more widely available. Food preservation shifted from fermentation, which had nutritional benefits, to canning, which was safe and convenient but eliminated living cultures. The diversity of the diet began to shrink. The cookware got better. The food it cooked got worse. This is the great historical paradox of the modern kitchen. We have access to the finest cooking equipment in human history. And we are, by many nutritional measures, eating less diverse, less micronutrient-rich food than our ancestors who cooked in pits and stone-boiled soup in animal stomachs. The mystery of ancient cooking is not really about technique. It is about this: those ancient humans understood, on an instinctive and cultural level, something that we are only now beginning to rediscover through nutritional science. Cooking is not just about applying heat to food. It is about transformation, chemical, biological, physical. And the methods they used, from earth ovens to stone boiling to fermentation, were not inferior substitutes for modern cooking. They were, in their own ways, sophisticated technologies tuned over thousands of years of trial and error. Here is the remarkable thing: every single one of these ancient techniques is still alive today. The earth oven lives in the Hawaiian imu, the barbecue pit, the South American pachamanca. Stone boiling echoes in Japanese ishiyaki cooking, in certain traditional Korean preparations. Direct coal cooking is the foundation of real Argentine asado, of Turkish mangal, of the primal art of true barbecue. Fermentation never went away. It lives in sourdough bread, in kimchi, in yogurt, in miso, in wine, in beer, in the funky aged cheeses that chefs spend fortunes on. And it is experiencing a renaissance, as modern food science validates what ancient cultures knew intuitively, that fermented foods do something no pill or supplement can replicate. Cooking in leaves, in parchment paper, in banana leaves, in foil packets, is the modern echo of the most ancient wrapping and steaming technique. Slow cooking in a sealed vessel, a Dutch oven, a slow cooker, an instant pot is the technological descendant of the earth oven. We haven't abandoned ancient cooking. We've just forgotten where it came from. So what have we learned from following this mystery back through time? We've learned that the absence of cookware did not mean the absence of cooking skill. Ancient humans were not fumbling in the dark, eating raw meat and hoping for the best. They were sophisticated, adaptable food technologists who developed solutions to every culinary challenge they faced, from boiling without a pot to slow cooking, without an oven to preserving food without a refrigerator. We've learned that they were, by many measures, physically stronger and more nutritionally diverse than modern humans. Not because they were some idealized version of humanity, but because their food supply, however challenging it was to obtain, was extraordinarily complex, seasonal, varied, and unprocessed. And we've learned something perhaps most surprising of all, that the smartest thing we can do in our modern kitchens is look backward, slow down, use earth, use time, use fire, use fermentation. Recover the instinct that our ancestors spent hundreds of thousands of years developing. The mystery of how ancient people cooked without pots and pans turns out not to be a mystery about limitation. It is a mystery about ingenuity, about the extraordinary human capacity to look at the raw materials of the natural world and see not just what they are, but what they could become. They didn't need a kitchen. They were the kitchen, and somewhere deep in our evolutionary memory, so are we.